That's not bad though. I do think that, for a lot of you, in order to be happy or to be happy with a new beginning here, I look at this and I think some of you are needing to become independent or become independent of a person or thing. Now, with the Ace of Cups being the overall, absolutely, we're talking about, a happy new beginning, emotionally fulfilling here, better connection to spirit with the Ace of Cups. And then you have the Seven of Cups at the bottom of the deck. That worries me a little bit because it's like, how do I get there? I look at this one and I think, how do I get to the castle that I'm building in the sky, right? I don't think it's about the options. I think it's about, fantasizing about this, but then not actually making it happen, but it's there for you. It's like there. Now, with the Seven of Swords as a past coming through, I do think you've dealt with in the past, right? It's funny because normally I would see this and think, not really talking about things, not really discussing your feelings, your plans, but I think that this is what you've dealt with is deception, things not being very clear, people not being very honest. But moving into the star, this to me is like, I deserve better. I deserve better. And then you have the Ace of Cups, right? Which is perfect. Hope and healing, emotional balance here, no longer dealing with deception or looking to heal a past issue with somebody not being very honest. And I look at that with the Five of Pentacles and I think, it's funny because it reminds me of Taurus a little bit here. But, no longer dealing with rejection here, healing, having to be rejected or being pushed out. I don't think it's about financial struggles. I think it's more about you being independent here with the Nine of Pentacles being future conditions. I mean, definitely with the Pentacles showing up, we could be talking about, needing to manage out finances here, right? So that you can maintain independence. But if you're looking at, deception here is the past coming through, healing a situation, I think it's about healing the fact that there has been rejection due to somebody being dishonest or you having to reject somebody or a situation that wasn't very clear. Because I look at the Five of Swords as hopes and fears, and I think you don't want to get caught up in dealing with a situation anymore where, somebody is looking to take advantage of you. I mean, that's basically it. And then with the Five of Swords, having to deal with somebody who is willing to do whatever it takes to get what they want, and it's like, no, I can't do that anymore, right? Like I feel like you physically can't, because it's just going to put you in a more difficult spot. Now, with the Three of Wands, I think that once you're into this place where you're like removed from the situation here and, you're not dealing with this anymore, this to me is like, looking out toward this Ace of Cups with the Three of Wands being your best path to follow, right? You're taking the right action. That's what I get from this more than anything. You're doing the right thing here by, doing what is necessary to get your own healing and emotional balance by rejecting, what is wrong, what has been wrong. Now, with the Two of Pentacles, it's just trying to figure things out. But then I worry too about the flexibility. That's one of the things that, I point out a lot about the Two of Pentacles. This, definitely is about juggling two different situations, needing to manage finances, yes. But the card is about your ability to be flexible with different situations. In some decks, it actually looks at it as a positive thing. But, I look at it and think, you can't bend over backwards for somebody who would want to take from you. It's really about you needing to remove yourself from the situation more than anything else. But you have that Ace of Cups there, but I think that is for you. It is for you. It's for a new beginning for you, not with a previous situation, because you've already seen it for what it is. Because you're looking to heal it now by saying no and casting it out and rejecting it, right? And then the Fool. And I think it's you no longer willing to take a risk anymore. especially dealing with a person or situation that has been dishonest in the past. So with Temperance, I feel like you've been patient long enough. I get that more so than anything because of the Seven of Swords being there. And with the Two of Pentacles, it's like, no, no, I can't continue to do this anymore. I really do feel that way, right? Like I've been patient. Have kept my balance for this situation long enough, right? This is more about you now. It's time for you. It's time for you to have that Ace of Cups. Now, with the Nine of Wands, the reason why I say this kind of makes sense is because I see it two ways. I feel like one, because of the Five of Swords being your hopes and fears, this is looking at the battle ahead, right? But then the other thing though, too, is if we're talking about, you deserve better, it's about, no longer letting this kind of energy in. Like you can't deal with people who are being deceptive and being sneaky, right? But like I said, it's, looking at what you're going to have to deal with, what is coming at you next, right? And willing to be able to keep it out, like you needing to keep it out, because I go back to the Five of Pentacles and think, no, this can't come back in, it has to be over with. But with the Fool, I feel like you're no longer willing to take a risk. But I do think that it's about you needing to take a new path and, no longer dealing with what you have before, right? And no longer being flexible here and taking the risk in trusting a person or situation that has not been on the up and up because of that Seven of Swords, right? Especially if it's a situation here that's just caused you more difficulty with that Five of Pentacles being there. But I still look at the Star and the Nine of Pentacles and I think, if this is being offered to you, you can't allow past situations to stop this from happening, right? I mean, it's about you and your new beginning here and no longer dealing with this kind of crap anymore because you're looking at it like, no, I'm done being patient. I'm not letting this back in, and this to me, as far as a hope goes though, too, with the Five of Swords is hoping to be able to stand up for yourself, to fight for what you want, right? You do deserve better. Now, this could definitely be about the healing of a situation, but with everything that I'm seeing here, especially with this, I feel like it's about you now, being independent and removing yourself from this kind of situation, these kinds of people, right? I like it, but I still worry about you still trying to manage this situation with that Two of Pentacles because, the Fool, I see it both ways. It's too much of a risk, like not wanting to be the Fool, but then also needing to trust that, where you're headed now is going to lead to your own independence here and happiness with that Ace of Cups. All right. For singles, children can be a lot of different things. It could be that there are children involved in a situation. It could be that, there is somebody doing something that they're not supposed to because, they have children. Somebody doesn't want to have children. But the Three of Swords is really about needing balls to leave a bad situation. And that's basically it. So that children are not affected, if there are children involved in the situation. But with the Three of Swords, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. Definitely somebody knows about this. They know about it. And it's like, I need to leave this situation to better myself, and maybe having to do this for, right? But I look at that and I think, somebody is not being honest, but the other person knows about you, like, about the situation, that it's not right, you need to leave, right? Instead of looking at it and watching somebody else do something that they're not supposed to. All right. Now, as far as couples, it's safe for you to love. With you showing up, I see this one a little bit differently than the typical lovers, right? This one is definitely about whether or not to, follow the temptation or take, the road that is better for you, right? So definitely dealing with an outside person, but with it Be connected to it is safe for you to love. To me, this is saying that, third party situations are over with, right? It's okay for you to open up and love somebody who may have been doing something they shouldn't have before. I kind of get that with this. But then, I don't know. I look at that and I think it's okay for you, and even if you've been in situations with people who, couldn't make up their mind, right? Like they couldn't make up their mind on whether or not they wanted you or another person, if that makes sense. Because I still go back to that Ace of Cups and then I look at the Seven of Swords, and to me it makes sense looking at these, right? I mean, both of them are about third-party situations here and dealing with somebody who's being deceptive, not being very honest, you know. But I do worry about those of you who are single and you have children involved. But like I said, that could have to do with the fact that somebody may be wanting children, not wanting to have children, right? It just depends. But I look at that Three of Swords and I think this is definitely about needing to get out of a situation that is not good. It can't be kept hidden anymore. You already see it, right? Because you have the person in the background that's looking and seeing what's going on, right? If that makes sense. Geez, Gemini, what the hell, right? But the way that you come out on this, though, I almost feel like if we're talking about relationships here, some of you may be better on your own right now, But with the general read, right, this could be romantic or just family situations. But that Ace of Cups, though, that's for you. That is for you to make the most of and to be happy, right? And stop bending over backwards for people who are just continuing to be dishonest with you.